I read a story this week of a herd of elephants. And these researchers were watching this herd of elephants, and they noticed that there were two different female elephants in this group that didn't get on. There was a high-ranking female, which they called Susan, and she had a real problem with the lower-ranking female, which they called Winona. And Susan would bully Winona. Every time Winona went to the water hole, Susan would charge at her, so she had to go back and wait for everyone else to finish. And they just really didn't get on. And this continued. Both of these female elephants got pregnant, and the researchers were wondering what is going to happen as this plays out. Is Winona going to be safe? Is she going to carry the pregnancy through to term, which is a long time? Is what's going to happen when the baby is actually born? And so they watched this, and as it got closer to Winona giving birth, they had a suspicion that she might actually go away for the birth to protect her child. But if she did that, they weren't sure what would happen if she'd ever come back. And sure enough, time came. Winona left the herd, had her calf, and she'd had a few by this time. And she didn't actually bring her calf back. They named this calf Lucy. And Lucy arrived, and they still observed Winona and her new little herd. And they noticed that Lucy was very different from her other calves, from her other baby elephants. The other ones would stay quite close to her, but Lucy was much freer, much more adventurous, and she would wander away and explore things. She seemed to be a lot more inquisitive and interested in what was going on. Now, what they saw happen was they would all come back to the same water hole, and Winona would try and make sure that she didn't come when Susan and the other herd were there, so that there wasn't any potential for harm or danger to happen. But eventually, the inevitable happened, and they were there at the same time. And what they saw was actually quite remarkable. Lucy went off and started playing with Susan's offspring and the other offspring in this other herd. And she was running around. They said she was like running between the big elephant's legs and just having a great time. And at the end of the drinking moment where they all come to get their water, drinking session, that's probably not the right thing to say, is it? They're there, and generally they would go off, each kind of herd would be led off by the matriarch, and they would go off in separate directions. Lucy was so caught up in play that she ended up leaving with Susan and her herd. She was just having such a good time that she just wandered off with them. And they were watching this happen. They're like, what's Winona going to do? How is she going to respond to this? Is she going to go off in her own direction or change her behavior and join Lucy? And she ended up gathering her children and heading them all off in the same direction as Lucy and with Susan and her herd. And they said within 2 years, Winona and her offspring had fully reintegrated back into the herd. And it was fascinating because Lucy's engagement in play ended up bringing about a very unexpected result. It actually brought the herd back together. Yeah, our Burwood groups are about having fun, but there's more to it than just having fun. There is a subtle but really incredible power that happens in groups. Jared and I were doing Bible study during the week, and as we were going through this Bible study, it was on salvation and how am I saved? And the first thing that we looked at was, what's the one thing that you have to acknowledge before you can be saved? And that's that you have a need, that you need to be saved. There is something in your life that isn't right, and you need to come and accept what Jesus is offering to receive that. And it taps into this theme that runs throughout the Bible, which is we're all sinners. The heart is full of iniquity. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It's not good news, but you've got to deal with the bad news before you can accept the good news. And we're looking at this, and about a day later, I had a conversation with Lani. And we're talking about some things that had happened and were going on. And as we were talking about it, I was thinking, yes, we know probably inside that we're all sinners, but we don't need to just know that or read it in the Bible. We can also see it around us. We can see the hurt and the pain and the suffering and the wounds that not only we receive, but maybe we inflict on others. And it reminds me of that saying, Lani mentioned to me, hurt people hurt people. We all have pain and suffering. And even once you accept Jesus and give your life to him and follow him as a disciple, we still need healing. We still need to go on that journey of healing. In Philippians, Paul tells them, I want you to continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. It's this process that there's a continual process of always stepping closer and closer into the healing that God wants to give us. I read this book a few years ago, and it had this story in of a guy who was leading a retreat for pastors. And so they're in like this remote setting, and they're in this nice cabin, and he's got 6 pastors who he is working with. And he begins the weekend by getting them together and saying, look, why are you here? What's going on in your life? Where are you at right now? And the first one says, look, my marriage is breaking down. The second one shares that his church is going through this really ugly and messy split. The third one talks about how he is just burnt out and exhausted and tired. The fourth one says, well, actually things are going really well, but I don't know what to do with it now. The fifth one says that one of his team members who he's worked with such a long time had betrayed his trust and really done the dirty on him, and he was devastated. And the sixth one was actually the youngest of the group. And he heard all this and he said, I just have to say I feel a lot better already. You guys are just as screwed up as I am. And it's an interesting comment that he makes. Because I think we can easily think that we're alone in our sin, in our suffering, in our hurt, and so we stay silent about these things. We don't talk about them. And if you do that long enough, and if enough people do that long enough, it becomes part of the culture. About 90 years ago, 1939, Dietrich Bonhoeffer made this observation. He said, many Christians are unthinkably horrified when a real sinner is suddenly discovered among the righteous. No! What are they doing here? That can't be right. But he goes on to say, so we remain alone with our sin, living in lies and hypocrisy. I don't know about you, but this does not sound like the abundant life that Jesus gave his for. This doesn't sound like the kind of freedom that Paul talks about in Galatians. Following Jesus is not about living in a pseudo-pretend community where our faces tell one story, but our hearts tell a very different one. And so isolation is not the solution. Loneliness is terrible. Henry Cloud and John Townsend are 2 long-time clinical psychologists who use the Bible as their primary textbook. And they said this, virtually every emotional and psychological problem has alienation or emotional isolation at its core, or close to it. Isolation does not bring healing. Jesus brings healing. Jesus offers us healing and wants to give us that. In Isaiah, prophesying about what Jesus would do, it tells us that by his wounds, we are healed. He came, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, it's the sick. And What Jesus wanted to do was come and say, hey, I want to give you healing. I want to give you forgiveness. I want to give you salvation. I want to give you restoration. In Corinthians puts it this way. If anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here. All this from God who reconciled us to himself through Christ. He came and went through everything that he did so that in our mess and our sin and our wounds and our hurts and our struggles, that we could be forgiven of that and wiped clean of that and start this process of being not just reconciled to God, but healed as a result of that reconciliation. But the next part of the verse is the crazy part for me, the part that doesn't seem to make sense. And it says this, and he has committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. Now, quick question. Did Jesus heal people straight away? Yeah? Anyone? Yes? Can Jesus heal people straight away now if he wants to? Yeah. Could Jesus just say, all right, I will take you, and if you accept Liz, then I'm going to fully heal you and restore you and do everything I possibly am able to do, which is all things, to make you whole and new and perfect again. Could God do that? Yeah. But he doesn't. That's not his plan A. His plan A for healing is actually you and me, which is crazy to think about. His plan A for healing is, I want you to go and represent me, to be my ambassador, and I want you to be the one that has this ministry, this calling of reconciling people to me. He says, I want the healing to come through you. And in Ephesians, he says this. Instead, before the instead, he's talking about how, hey, guys, I don't want you to be young and like children about this. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. He's saying there that each of you have a part to do in helping maturity come about, and helping healing come about, and helping growth come about. Yes, God could do this in an instant on his own. But instead, he says, no, I want each of you to be involved in this work because I want you to be a part of what I'm doing. I don't want you to be separated from it. And so as we gather in groups over the next few months, not only are we going to have fun, but I think there's also going to be an opportunity for us to experience some healing. And so I want to encourage you to be open to that. Be open to the idea that God can do a divine work of healing, both in you, but also in others through you. Through your being there, through your words, through what you say, through your invite, through your willingness to play a game of Uno with somebody, through having a coffee, whatever it might be. What if God says, hey, I want to do a work of healing through you, and I want to do a work of healing in you through what somebody else might offer for you? See, grace can be available to us, but we may not always be available to that grace. The head works with information gathering. The heart works with experience gathering. So for growth to occur, it must include experiences where our hearts are open to each other, where we're open to that, where we're available. And yes, it's risky. Yes, it can feel daunting. But if we want to experience the healing that Jesus has for us, his plan A is to do it through people. and to do it through community. And are we ready for that? Are you open to that? I love this quote because these guys actually get this from the Bible. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul's talking to the church in Corinth, and he says, "We have spoken freely to you, Corinthians, and opened wide our hearts to you. We aren't withholding our affection from you, but you are withholding yours from us. And so as a fair exchange, I speak as to my children, open wide your hearts also." Be willing. Take that step of courage and be willing to open up and see what healing God can do in you and through you. So I guess what would happen if you were willing to do that? What would happen if we were willing to embrace an open posture towards authenticity, honesty? If we were willing to, in a safe space, acknowledge we're hurting, that we have wounds, that we need healing? What might God do in your life as you open up to somebody else? But also, what might God do for somebody else as he works through you to do that? I want to show you a picture. What do you see here? Someone said chicken. Yeah, you're hungry. What do you see? Work, dishes, cleaning up, wiping the table. What else? Community, fun, work, preparation, a lot of work to get all that food together, messy plates. What went into that experience? What was required for that to take place? Time, effort, love. I think Jesus knew this, and I think you do too. And at a subconscious level, we all know this. Powerful things can happen around a table. Do you agree? Invitations are made, chairs are filled, food is passed around, cups are topped up, stories are told, mess is made, experiences are shared, thoughts are provoked, honest questions are asked, truth is spoken, emptiness is filled, hunger is replaced with contentment. Over the next few months, you're going to have opportunity to sit around lots of tables. Some of these might be coffee tables. Some of these might be table tennis tables. Some of these might be craft tables or picnic tables, lunch tables. As you do, I want to invite you to do two things. Be willing to approach that table with an open heart. Be courageous and open to what healing God may want to bring into your life through your experience, through your conversations. The second thing is to walk up to that table with a heart that's willing to give. Heart that's willing to give your time, your ear, heart that's willing to give your love, heart that's willing to look for ways that you can remind the other people at that table about the gospel, the good news of Jesus, what he came to do, what he is doing, what he is going to do. So I want to invite you to join one of those tables this semester. For the next 4 months, see what God does as the table becomes a place where we let others see our wounds and we allow them to help heal our wounds. See what it looks like when that table has the grace of the gospel as its magnificent, beautiful centerpiece. Experience a table where those sitting around it care more about their companions than themselves, where we're able to listen without judging and come alongside without condemning. Sit at a table with others also struggling to comprehend the knowledge that they are fully loved by God. Not just welcome at the table, but desperately and fiercely wanted there. Spend time at a table made of rough-hewn humility, nailed together by a Jesus who has given us this ridiculous freedom to be able to choose wrong and yet still be made right. Make that table a place where we love, especially when it isn't easy, allowing us to be vulnerable, inviting every voice to join the conversation, pushing us meal by meal, craft by craft, game by game, coffee by coffee towards deep and meaningful Jesus-speaking community. I want to invite the worship team to come up. We're going to sing I Speak Jesus. And if we're to sum up what we want to see happen at our groups this semester, it's that we speak Jesus to each other. We speak the gospel to each other. We remind each other of that. And as we do that, we get to see the healing that comes from him using other people to heal us and him using us to help bring healing to others.